Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Kainos Smart Summer 2014 Release, Automated Testing for Workday Implementations. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You have joined the presentation listening using your computer speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the telephone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the questions pane on your control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. I would now like to introduce Rory Digby, Smart Product Specialist, Kenos.
Thank you very much, Laurie, and thank you all for attending. I'm aware that there are people from time zones ranging from London to the west coast of the US, so thanks to everybody for giving up your time today. I hope you get great value out of this session. I know from the registrations that we have a number of different groups in the audience, some people who have attended previous webinars and have seen Kainos Smart before, and other people who are new. In today's session, I am going to give you an overview of Kenos as a company and take you through a little bit of the background of the Kenos product, Kainos Smart product, and then take you through a demonstration. Because of the time constraints of today's demo, it is a pre-recorded demonstration that you will see me moving through. Okay, so if we start with an overview of Kenos as a company, we are not a new company on the block, on the IT block by any stretch. We have been going from 1986 and we're started out of Queen's University in Belfast, Northern Ireland. To date, we have worked with over 150 global customers, primarily in the UK and Europe, but through our Kainos Smart product, we are now working with more and more companies in the US and throughout the rest of the world. We have over 600 experienced staff in Kenos located across 4 main sites. Our head office is in Belfast, Northern Ireland. We also have offices in Dublin, London, and a development centre in Gdansk in Poland. Our Workday practice numbers over 80 professional consultants, and that is a key area of focus for Kenos as we move into the future as a company. So if we have a little look at our unique position, when we look at the Workday system, it's a cloud-based solution. There are now over 700 Workday customers. Every one of those customers is on the same version of code, and every customer has a testing requirement. What credentials Kenos to fill that particular gap? As I said, we've been in existence for over 27 years, and long before we moved into the sphere of Workday, we were offering automated test consultancy to our other blue chip clients that we worked along with. So we have a heavy skill base within automated testing. We are Workday implementation partners ourselves, and we implement Workday primarily in the UK and Europe. Through that Workday implementation, we have the skills within our Workday practice that allows us to feed a unique insight into the product that is Kainos Smart. We are also software solution specialists, and although we are an IT services company primarily, we have incubated a number of products in-house and successfully brought them to market. And finally, the most important piece of this jigsaw puzzle is that we are Workday's primary testing partners. We currently have 25 Kenos employees who work as part of the internal QA test team, functionally testing the Workday updates and the new functionality being released by Workday. A very key point of that relationship is that through it we have early access to new Workday functionality coming downstream, and that allows us for the product Kainos Smart to keep our Selenium automation, which sits at the back end of Smart, up to date and in line with the latest Workday functionality. So in a nutshell, what is SMART? SMART is basically an acronym that stands for Scalable, Measurable, Automated, Repeatable Testing. So it's basically a test automation suite for Workday implementations. And you'll see there that it's specifically designed for the business user. Now what that means is that as an end user of SMART, you don't need to worry about the technical expertise of JavaScript or .NET or whatever else would be required to maintain any automation. That is all done by Kenos. As a customer of Kainos Smart, all you have to do is supply your own customer specific data through the interface, which we'll see a little bit later in the demonstration. What Workday functionality can be tested via Smart? The first piece that we will look at is business process functionality. So this is primarily the core HCM business processes such as hire, termination, change job, request compensation change, and so on. In this session, I am very excited to be demonstrating our new security functionality that will be released in July. That functionality will allow Kainos Smart clients to automatically test and validate their security configurations, which is a very high value test function that all of our clients are requesting. I'm also very excited to announce that we are releasing new integrations functionality in the form of an integrations comparison utility that will allow you to compare single and multi-file comparisons. So if we have a brief look at how Kainos Smart actually works. Currently, any organization that is testing their Workday implementation through a manual process basically has a team of testers, and those testers are lifting a set of test scenarios, opening up a browser, navigating to their Workday tenant, and inputting those scenarios and then verifying the results against the actual results against their expected results. When you use Kainos Smart, it's the exact same. The test scenarios that you would have executed manually are input into Kainos Smart, and Smart then opens up multiple browsers in the cloud, navigates to your own Workday tenant, and executes those same scenarios, except because it's automation, it can do that much faster and more efficiently. So now let's move into our Kainos Smart Summer 2014 demonstration. Just like Workday, Smart is a SaaS-based solution. So every new client that signs up for Workday is provided with their own Smart instance and one administrator account, which they then use to set up how many users they require. I'm just going to log into the system. Every user that logs into Kainos Smart arrives on the My Test Runs page, which is basically just a history of all the previously executed tests for that particular user in Smart against a particular tenant. If we have a look first at the business process functionality, and for some of you in the audience who are familiar with Kainos Smart before, you will have seen this particular functionality before. Before I go into our wizard, I would like to take a step back and think of testing in general. Any testing, be it manual or automated, generally has three main tasks that need to be completed. The first of those tasks is coming up with the scenarios that you want to execute. The second task is executing those scenarios. And the third task is verifying your actual results against your expected results and doing some reporting out thereafter. If we look at the first of those, creating test scenarios, we have developed in Kainos Smart what we call wizard-based test cases. This is functionality that will allow you to automatically draw configuration and data from your tenant into our Smart data templates, which are then executable within Smart. So if I open up the wizard, you will see that in the function drop-down there are a number of business processes. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to select a straightforward business process, which is one-time payment. As we start to build our test data, if we think about the one-time payment process, we first need to input who is the person who is going to initiate the process, or who is the person who is going to request the one-time payment. In this example, I'm going to use the search function within Smart to identify Logan McNeil. I'm then going to use the same search function to identify the employee who's going to receive the one-time payment. And in this example, it will be Betty Lou. As you can see here, you'll recognize these fields are the same fields that are displayed in your Workday tenant on the one-time payment screen. I'm now going to start entering the data into the wizard. We have a drop-down feature for the calendar. I'm going to select July 14th. And at this point, I'd like to point out a new feature that we've introduced to the wizard and are releasing in July to allow this date to become a parameterized date. So when I click the Create Parameter button, you will see that the hard-coded date has been converted to today plus 5 days. And the reason for this is to make the test scripts reusable into the future. If this same test case is executed in 3 months' time or 6 months' time, it'll pick up the execution date will pick up today, the current date at that time, plus or minus the number of days in the parameter field. If we pause for a second at the one-time payment plan, I'd just like to point out that this is not a static list of one-time payment plans that we have built into the wizard. This is being directly taken out, directly retrieved from our Kenos PT2 tenant, and if Kainos Smart was pointed at one of your own customer tenants, it would be retrieving your one-time payment plans dynamically into this drop-down. I'm going to enter an amount of 2,000 and select US dollars, and at this point we've entered all of the data required to process a simple one-time payment for Betty Lou. When I click Next, I'm prompted to capture some test case metadata. A meaningful description for the test, a unique test case ID for tracking and reporting, and most important of all, our expected result. When I hit the Add Test Case button, you'll see that our test scenario has dropped into our basket on the right-hand side. The user can then go back through the wizard to create another test and another test again, as many tests as is required for their particular needs. When they hit Generate, this is the one-time payment data template that would be produced, and you'll recognize the data that we entered into the wizard has been automatically populated into the spreadsheet. At this point, we've created our test cases for the one-time payment business process. This data template will be saved, and the process will be repeated for whatever other business processes you want to test. Whenever you move to execution, it's a straightforward process within Kainos Smart. We simply create a test run and then add the particular business processes that we want to target in the test. You can see from the left-hand side we have extensive coverage of the core HCM business processes. For the purposes of the demonstration, I am going to set up a test run to run through a number of transactions that will feed a payroll integration, and I'm going to kick off that payroll integration at the end of those business process transactions. So I'm going to include hire, request compensation change, request leave of absence, and request one-time payment. As I said, I'm also going to include our EIB to launch our payroll integration at the end. So now that we've added the particular business processes and integrations that we want to include in our payroll test run, we upload the data templates that we created via the wizard. Again, and this is a very straightforward process, but before we do that, I want to focus on a new piece of functionality that we're releasing in July. This request has come from our clients and it's based in the need to feed multiple transactions into an integration. Because of that need, we may need to sequence the order of execution for those business processes. There may be a flow of data from the hire into the compensation change, into the leave of absence, and into the one-time payment, which would then feed our payroll integration. So just like Workday, we have based this sequencing on the model that Workday employ for their business process steps. You simply enter the letter in alphabetical format that you want them to execute in. So in this example, we'll be executing the hire first, then the compensation change, then the leave of absence, then the one-time payment, and finally we will launch our payroll integration. Now that I've specified the sequence of execution, I'm ready to upload my templates. I simply navigate to the network location that I stored that data template that I created via the wizard, select open, and I'm done for the hire. I complete that process for the compensation change, the leave of absence, the one-time payment, and our EIB integration at the end. Finally, before we save the test run, we give it a meaningful name. So now that we've saved the test run, we're ready to execute. You'll see that we have 12 particular tests executing. And as an illustrative tool, I'm going to play a video to try and demonstrate what's actually happening in the cloud when you click that execute button within Kainos Smart. So when you hit that execute button, Smart will open up a browser in the cloud, navigate to your Workday tenant, and launch the business process that you've supplied in the test run. It'll start entering the data from the data template that you created via the wizard directly into your Workday tenant. As you can see from the video, because it's automation, the speed of execution is very high. Smart doesn't need to take a break, it doesn't need a pause. You'll see at this point, this is a deliberate pause that I've inserted into the video to demonstrate how Smart reads the next step of the business process. You'll see in the top right hand corner that we're logged in as Steve Morgan. Smart will dynamically read from the Workday tenant that the next step required is an assign organization step, and Logan McNeil is the person responsible for executing it. Smart will automatically log out of Steve's account and log in as Logan, picking that assign organizations task up from her work feed and start executing, again entering the data from the spreadsheet. This process of logging out, logging in, and entering the data continues until the business process either completes or encounters an error. The power of Smart is not only is it opening up one browser in the cloud to process that one hire, for every other column in the spreadsheet, it's opening up a separate browser. And for every other spreadsheet that you uploaded, it's opening up browsers for those too. So through the power of concurrency, Smart can execute a huge number of scenarios very efficiently in a short space of time. So now that our payroll test run has completed, we can see that all of our business processes have completed successfully and our integration has been launched. We can also utilize the reuse functionality within Kainos Smart. This typically comes into play when an organization, would go through some sort of organizational change and would require a change to their configuration. A typical example here would be where we've processed our payroll test run before that configuration change and we're happy with our baseline. After the change, we want to execute the same set of tests to ensure that the same result is achieved. So through the reuse functionality, I don't have to upload data templates again. I can simply reuse the same collateral that I had already executed and execute that again. And when it completes, I can then use our new integration comparison to check the output file from that payroll integration to ensure that it is the exact same after the configuration change as it was before. To do that, you simply create an integration comparison which will take you into this new screen. I am going to upload two sets of files here, our payroll integration from before the update and also our payroll integration output file from after the update. To do that, again, is a very straightforward, repeatable process. We simply set file, click on the correct file, and open it. And again, we upload our file from after the change. Before we save the test run again, we give it a meaningful name. And I just want to point out at this stage, in terms of compliance around SOX or any other compliance that you may need to display for your auditors, you can use the test run name to insert the unique ID from your change control tracking system in order to provide traceability for any change request for an auditor. If that auditor wants to see evidence of what testing was completed for a particular configuration change, you can have that evidence in Kainos Smart. I'm now going to save our test run and execute. And you can see that we have a comparison executing for our payroll integration from before the change and after the change. Once it completes, you will see that, and I'll apologize open-heartedly at this point, the cosmetics of the integration comparison screen are being finalized as we speak before the release next week. But we can see here at this point that this comparison returned a match. Because the file matched exactly, that's the result that we wanted. We can set our result as passed and save the test run. I'd just like to point out at this point that when you get into post go live and testing of Workday updates, this same integration comparison functionality can be utilized for testing your Workday updates. Typically, the process that our clients would follow would be to run out a set of integrations for a given data set against one version of Workday. Let's take Workday 22 as an example. After Workday updates their tenant to Workday 23, they would then run the same set of integrations for the same data set out of Workday 23. They would capture the output files from both of those integration test runs and use the integration comparison functionality to do a bulk comparison on all of those integration files. At this point, we've seen how Kainos Smart can be used to create test cases for business processes and integrations, how it can execute them, and how it can be used to verify the results. I'm now going to move on to talk about our new security functionality. Before I move into this, this functionality came via requests from our clients. Security is a great concern for every Workday client, and it's a particular area of testing that everybody invests a lot of time and effort in. This new functionality will bring value on initial implementations, ongoing organizational changes which require configuration updates, and Workday updates themselves. Also, it can be run anytime as desired in order to give the confidence to any member of the organization that your security configuration is exactly as it should be. Our security functionality has two parts, task security and field security. Now, the task security functionality, if I explain that a little bit before we go into the wizard, the task security functionality allows you to check the related actions of any object in Workday. So for any given employee or organization, you can check that they have access to particular tasks on another object within Workday. As an example of that, it would be whether Logan McNeil has the ability to hire an employee into the Human Resources Department, which she should have, and whether she should not have the ability to hire an employee into the Sales Department, which she should not have. Also, this new functionality will allow you to test your security configuration at the field level. And by that I mean one employee's access to personal information stored in another data object in Workday, be that an employee or an organization. Obviously that's highly sensitive testing that needs to be carried out, and that's the driver behind this new functionality that we've created. So if we just open up the wizard, again select from the function drop down, we go for our task permissions, select our tenant and start to build our test data. You'll recognize that this is a very similar approach to the business processes, and that's a deliberate ploy on Kenos' part, because we like you to get up and running very fast. We've kept the functionality similar the whole way through. So for our task permissions, I first select the employee that I'm going to check, the employee that's the subject of the test. In this case, Pedro Santiago. I'm also going to select which object type Pedro is going to be checking his tasks against. Again, in our initial deployment of this, we've went for 3 main areas based on our client's needs. Those objects are organization, position, and worker. The first one I'm going to go through an example of is for organization. So when I select the organization, I can then select the organization type, be that a company, division, hierarchy, region, or supervisory organization. For this example, I'm going to select company, and then we use the search functionality to identify the particular company that is the subject of this test. You can see that our search has returned 2 results for USA, and the example that I'm going to select is Global Modern Services Inc. USA. I now have the ability to specify any possible related action that can be configured, that can be associated with an organization within Workday. I use the drop down to identify those and add them. So we're going to check, does Pedro Santiago have the ability to view the company Global Modern Services Inc. USA? Does he have the ability to edit that particular company's tax ID? Does he have the ability to create ad hoc bank transactions? And finally, does he have the ability to create a requisition for that particular organization? As is the case with all security testing, it is far more important to ensure that someone cannot do what they should not be able to do, rather than verify that they can do what they should be able to do. In order to allow you to test this, you'll see that we have a visible checkbox here, and basically what this means is, will Pedro Santiago have access to this task in the related actions drop down of the organization Global Modern Services? He should have access to view the company. He should not have access to edit the company's tax ID or create an ad hoc bank transaction, but he should be able to create a requisition for this company. Again, we prompt you to enter a unique test case ID for tracking purposes, and also a meaningful description of what this test is for. Finally, we add that test case to the basket and hit generate. You'll see, just like the business processes, a data template is automatically produced and populated based on the values we entered into the wizard. If we look at this test scenario, Pedro Santiago should be able to see view company in the drop down, should not have access to edit company tax ID, create ad hoc bank transactions, and should be able to create a requisition. I'm now going to go back to the start of the wizard and take you through an example against the worker object. Again, we select the worker that we're going to log in as, who would be the subject of our test. In this example, it's the employee Mark Navarro. And we'll select the worker object. Now we want Mark Navarro to check for an employee, and that employee is going to be Marco Silva. and we select Marco. Before I start selecting related actions, let's just review what this test is going to do. We're going to be logged in as Mark Navarro, and we're going to check what access Mark Navarro has to Marco Silva. We use the drop down again to determine the tasks that Mark Navarro should or should not have access to. So as we add those, in the same way as we did before, we can see that we're going to test Mark's access to the end academic appointment track task, the add stock grant task, the assess potential task within talent, the leave results for worker within the time and leave drop-down, whether he has the ability to change job for Marco Silva, and whether he has the ability to assign work to Marco Silva. Mark Navarro should have the ability to add a stock grant for Marco Silva. He should also have the ability to assess the potential for Marco Silva as part of talent management. He should not have access to any of the others in the drop-down. Again, the process is followed where we enter a unique test case ID and a description and add that test case to the basket. The wizard can be used to add additional test cases as required. And when we hit generate, you'll see that again a data template is produced. If we have a look at these particular examples, both tests are for Mark Navarro against different employees. Test 1 will be checking his access for Marco Silva, and Test 2 will check his access against the contingent worker Araceli Bermudez. I'd like to draw your attention to this particular task. As you can see, Mark Navarro should not have access to assign work to the employee Marco Silva. Again, to create a security test, to execute a security test, it's the same functionality as business processes. You simply upload your data template, enter the name of the test run, and save. We'll execute, and you'll see that that particular security test is now executing. And if we go in and have a little look at the details, we have 2 tests executing, and when they complete, you'll see that both tests have completed, and Smart has automatically verified that the first test has failed and the second test has passed. If we go in and have a look at the details of this first test, what does it mean when Smart marks a test as failed? We can see that we're logged in, going to log in as Mark Navarro and check the employee Marco Silva. Our expected results that we entered into the wizard were that Mark should have access to end academic appointment track, should not have access to the first one, should have access to add stock grant and assess potential, and should not have access to leave results for worker, change job, or be able to assign work. Our actual results at the time of execution, Smart determined that Mark did not have access to the end academic appointment track, does have access to add stock grant, does have access to assess potential, both of which are fine. Again, does not have access to leave results for worker or change job, again, which was as we expected. But what we did not expect was that Mark Navarro would have the ability to assign work to Marco Silva, and that has returned a result of fail. And in the instance of failure, Smart will capture a screenshot of the tenant at that particular time, and you can see that we're logged in as Mark Navarro, and he does indeed have access to assign work to the employee Marco Silva. If we come back and have a look at the test that completed and passed successfully, you can see that our actual results at the time of execution perfectly match the expected results we defined in the wizard. Now that we've reviewed the task security functionality, I'd like to focus a little bit on our field security functionality. As I said at the start, this is a recorded session, so I have a previously executed field security test that I'm going to take you through. This is the test we're going to go through, so there are 4 particular tests in it, and if we have a look at the data template that was produced via the wizard, this data template was produced in the exact same way as the task tasks data template was via the wizard. If we have a look, we have 4 test cases, the first of which is Mark Navarro is going to be checking for personal field information against the employee Betty Lou. When we talk about checking at the field level, we're talking about individual fields with, again, associated with the data object. Fields like ethnicity, religion, salary, all of the sensitive fields that only a very small group of people within your Workday tenant would have access to. So for the majority of these scenarios, you're going to be checking negative scenarios to ensure that people do not have access to sensitive data within your Workday system. Before we execute this test and have a look at the results, I'd like to have a little bit of a closer look at the 4th test case. In this example, Teresa Serrano we will be testing Teresa Serrano's field access to the worker Betty Lou. Teresa should not be able to see Betty Lou's home addresses. She should be able to see Betty Lou's home phone number. She should not have access to Betty Lou's religion field, and she should not have access to Betty Lou's compensation. Again, the process of executing a field security test is the exact same as the process we went through for the task security test. We add it to the test run, upload our data template, enter our test run name, and save. So if we have a look at the test that completed a little bit earlier, we can see that in this test, 3 of these tests passed and 1 failed. If we have a little bit of a closer look at the one that failed, this is the example that I pointed out where we would be checking Teresa Serrano's access to personal information associated with Betty Lou. As we input it into the wizard, Teresa Serrano should not have access to Betty Lou's home address, and when Smart executed the test, it found that Teresa did not have access. Teresa should have access, however, to Betty's home phone number, and Smart found that yes, she did have access to that particular field. Teresa should not have access to the religion field, and Smart determined that Teresa could not see Betty Lou's religion. However, for the last one, we expected that Teresa Serrano would not have any access to Betty Lou's total base pay amount, but at the time of execution, Smart determined that Teresa Serrano did indeed have access to that particular field. And as is the case with all failures, all field tests in Smart, when it encounters a failure, it captures a screenshot of the tenant at that time. And we can see here that we're logged in as Teresa Serrano, we're looking at the employee Betty Lou, and Teresa can indeed see Betty Lou's total base pay. So, just to recap, we have created and executed and verified results tests for business processes and integrations. We used the integration comparison functionality to check files from before an organizational change and after an organizational change. We talked about how that same functionality could be utilized for bulk integrations during Workday update tests. And finally, we went through the high-value security test functionality that we're very excited to be releasing next week. After you complete all of your testing, it is possible to produce reports out of Kainos Smart by simply checking the particular test runs that you want to execute results for and select to download. And this is an example of one of the reports that are produced out of Kainos Smart. That completes the demonstration of the new functionality that we'll be releasing in July. We'd be more than happy to run a live demo for any organization in attendance who would like to have a look at that functionality in a little bit more detail. Now I'd like to go through the benefits that your organization could reap if you take up Kainos Smart as part of your test strategy. If we first have a look at testing, all testing in general will go through cycles. This is a comparison of manual testing versus Smart. For manual testing, you will input an amount of money and resources in order to complete your cycle of testing. With Smart, there is an investment of time and effort as well, but because of the power of automation and concurrency and reusability, that is not going to be as much of an investment as the manual approach. As you move through your cycles, because of the reuse functionality within Kainos Smart, the differential between the investment in testing starts to grow. For the manual approach, in order to achieve the same results you got the last time, you must invest the same time, money and resources as you did for the previous cycle. As you've seen within Kainos Smart, because of the reuse functionality, the investment is a fraction of what it would be for the first cycle. The more cycles that you execute, the greater the difference will be between the investment of money and effort in the manual approach versus utilizing Kainos Smart as part of your overall testing strategy. So in conclusion, if we have a look at the business benefits, we would expect, and are being reported from our client base, 50% reduction in cost and effort associated with implementation testing, and an 80% reduction in cost and effort associated with update testing. Obviously, the reuse functionality and our new bulk comparison functionality for integrations is going to bring huge benefits for update testing. Alongside that, Kainos Smart will allow you to significantly improve your test quality and increase your coverage without having to massively increase your test team. And ultimately, we want you to maximize your investment in Workday. Now, as we move forward to the Q&A, I'll hand over to Laurie, who, as she pointed out earlier on, has collated the questions that you have been submitting throughout this webinar so far.
Thank you, Rory. We're now going to begin answering the questions submitted during today's presentation. As a reminder, you can still submit questions through the questions pane in your attendee control panel. Any questions that we don't answer will be addressed following the webinar. Rory, you can go ahead and address the questions now.
Thank you very much, Laurie. Okay, the first question that I'm seeing here is, how is Smart sold? Smart is sold following the same principle as Workday. Smart is a SaaS solution, and just like Workday, you would sign up for Smart for a number of years, and your subscription fee would be based on the number of employees in your Workday tenant. Let me have a look. The second question coming in here is, with regards to our one of the items on our roadmap, is Workday Financials part of your product? At this particular time, Financials is not part of our product, but it is on our roadmap, and a lot of our current clients and the people that we're talking to in the field are saying that Workday Financials is of very high importance to them, and because of that, that is an area that we will be actively moving towards in the near future. This is an interesting question. Can Kenos Smart be used for SOX compliance? I have done some research on Workday community. I've been following a few threads on SOX compliance and how organizations are following SOX compliance procedures with their Workday implementations. On its own, Kainos Smart is not going to make any organization SOX compliant, but from going through the threads on community, I definitely believe that the functionality that I showed to you within Kainos Smart today could be built into your SOX compliant process. The ability to provide traceability from your change control system right through to evidence of the testing executed for that particular change control is an example of one of those facilities that would be in line with a SOX compliant process. Let me see. This is a very forward question, so I'll field it. What technology are we using, and why couldn't we do this ourselves? I'll be open and honest. without selling the farm, we utilize the Selenium automation framework within Workday, and yes, it's absolutely possible for any organization to invest the time and effort to come up with their own automation. The difference with Kainos Smart, as I touched on at the very start of the presentation, is our very unique relationship with Workday in supplying them with 25 QA resources, and through that relationship we have early access to the upcoming Workday functionality, and that allows us to have our Selenium automation up to date in line with Workday updates. For any organization who's in attendance, to try and do this yourself, you could achieve it the first time up, but you would then always have to react after the Workday updates to update your automation, and because of that small window that's available for the Workday update testing, I think you would find that by the time you had your automation pack updated, the Workday update would be getting pushed to your production environment without you having executed the amount of testing that you would have hoped to. I have time to take one more question. What's the level of effort required in terms of configuring Kainos Smart at the start? When any client signs up for Kainos Smart, a Kainos Smart subscription, we would always recommend that they, based on the skill set of that particular organization, we would recommend that they purchase between 80 and 160 hours of professional services along with their subscription. Those hours are drawn down on a time and materials basis, so you'll only pay for what you use. Typically the types of activities our clients use that time for is to get them set up with an initial set of tests that they can execute within Kainos Smart. Through that process, they would be enabled to extend that coverage to meet all of their testing needs as they move forward with Kainos Smart and extend their Workday implementation. I'm conscious that we are moving towards the end of our webinar, so I'd just like to let you know that if anybody in attendance wants to find out more about Kainos Smart, you can submit inquiries directly to smart@kainos.com, or alternatively visit our website www.kainossmart.com. You will also find on the website a list of our existing clients, some previous collateral on the previous webinars that we had executed, and also some videos just giving you a bit of background. That completes the webinar. I'd like to finish up by thanking everybody for attending, whatever time zone you're in. I hope you have a very good morning, afternoon, evening, or indeed good night. Thank you very much. Laurie,
Thank you, Rory.
Back to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Rory, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, Kainos Smart Summer 2014 Release, Automated Testing for Workday Implementations. To find out more, please contact smart@kainos.com. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation, and we would appreciate it if you would complete that and provide your feedback. You will also receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. On behalf of Kenos and our presenter, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.